All right, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a real, inside look at how medical professionals are actually trained to evaluate herbal medicine. If you have ever found yourself standing in the pharmacy aisle, just staring at rows of supplements and traditional remedies, trying to figure out what's fact and what's just clever marketing, well, you are definitely in the right place. We're going to unpack the rigorous and honestly fascinating framework that clinicians use to guarantee patient safety and make sure these things actually work.
So let's start with a phrase I know you've heard before. Honestly, maybe you've even said it yourself. Because a plant is natural, it must be harmless. It sounds totally logical, right? I mean, it's just a plant. It comes straight from the earth. How could a simple leaf or a root possibly be dangerous? But this pervasive myth creates a massive knowledge gap, and out in the clinical world, that gap can actually be incredibly dangerous.
Let's contrast that myth with the actual clinical reality. The truth is, plants are not just sitting around waiting for us to make a nice cup of tea out of them. They are living organisms, and they produce some wildly complex, powerful bioactive chemicals. And they do this for biological defense. They are literally pumping out these chemicals to fight off insects, diseases, and grazing animals. Because these compounds are biologically active, they have real, measurable physiological effects on the human body, which means they carry very real physiological risks.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll tackle the natural safety myth. Then, botanical identity and parts. Third, how preparation changes potency. Fourth, hidden risks and interactions. And we'll wrap it all up with the 7-point safety checklist.
All right, Section 1, the natural safety myth.
Before we get into the heavy science, we really need to understand the human element here. Why do patients turn to herbs in the first place? Well, the reality is that herbal medicine is everywhere. It is highly accessible. You can grab it at pharmacies, local markets, online, but it goes way deeper than just convenience. In regions like Malaysia, for instance, herbs carry profound cultural and heritage meaning. They represent this deeply embedded trust across Malay, Chinese, Indian, and indigenous traditions. For so many people, taking herbs is a trusted, foundational pillar of self-care used for everything from basic stress relief to digestive comfort.
Moving right along to Section 2, botanical identity and parts.
Picture this. Someone walks into a clinic and says, "Hey, I'm taking an herb." The absolute first step for any clinician assessing their safety is establishing a precise botanical identity. You simply cannot rely on common local names. That is a recipe for disaster. One common name might refer to completely different plant species depending on what region you're in. And sometimes, those look-alike plants can be incredibly toxic.
That's exactly why clinicians don't ask for the common name. They want the scientific binomial name, the exact genus and species. But it doesn't stop there. Which part of the plant are you actually using? Is it a leaf, a root, the stem bark? The chemical composition totally changes between a delicate leaf and a dense woody root. And that means the clinical effect and the potential toxicity changes too. We also have to look at the harvest source, the soil conditions, and the authentication batch just to make sure that what is printed on the label is actually what's inside the bottle.
Okay, Section 3, how preparation changes potency.
Knowing the plant and the part is great, but the actual method used to process that plant fundamentally alters its risk profile. Just look at the difference between an infusion and a decoction. An infusion is essentially what you do when you make tea. You're just steeping delicate leaves or flowers in hot water for a short time to extract those mild, water-soluble oils. But a decoction, that requires literally boiling tough roots and barks for 15 to 30 minutes to drag out these dense, complex compounds. And then you've got tinctures, which use alcohol or solvents to pull out highly concentrated botanical constituents. Ultimately, the preparation method dictates both the dose and the danger.
So the crucial point here is that poorly manufactured products present severe health risks. We're talking about contamination from heavy metals like lead and mercury. We're talking about storage degradation, where things like heat and light cause the active compounds to break down into toxic byproducts. But honestly, perhaps the most shocking risk is pharmaceutical adulteration. This is an illegal practice where synthetic prescription drugs like super-potent steroids or blood thinners are secretly added into a herbal product, just so the manufacturer can claim it gives miraculous, rapid results.
Which brings us to Section 4, hidden risks and interactions.
Now let's look at what actually happens when these herbal active ingredients enter the human body and interact with our physiology, or worse, with our prescription medications. In clinical jargon, we look at pharmacodynamic and pharmacokinetic interactions. Let me translate that real quick. A pharmacodynamic interaction is basically when an herb and a drug do the exact same thing, which dangerously multiplies the effect. For example, if you combine a blood-thinning medication like warfarin with high doses of ginkgo, which also has antiplatelet properties, you are massively increasing your risk of severe bleeding. On the flip side, a pharmacokinetic interaction is when an herb actually changes the way your liver enzymes process other pharmaceutical drugs. It might flush the drugs out of your system way too fast or let them build up to highly toxic levels.
To really ground this in reality, let's look at a clinical scenario. Meet Puwan Amina. She is 54 years old and she's diabetic. In an effort to cure her diabetes, she decides to stop taking her prescribed metformin. Instead, she starts taking double doses of an unregistered, highly concentrated herbal powder that she found online. 2 weeks later, she presents to the clinic.
Let's look at how this creates a full-blown clinical emergency. Puwan Amina comes in experiencing extreme fatigue, the whites of her eyes have a yellow tint, which is jaundice, and her urine is the color of dark tea. Guys, these are absolute classic urgent red flags of acute herb-induced liver injury, known in the medical field as hepatotoxicity. Plus, she stopped her diabetes medication, which leads to a really dangerous care pathway delay. In a clinical setting, she needs to stop taking that herb immediately and get an urgent referral straight to the emergency department.
All right, our final section, number 5. The 7-point safety checklist.
So how do professionals actually prevent situations like Puwan Amina's? How can you evaluate a product safely? Well, first, we have to acknowledge that certain people are uniquely vulnerable. Pregnant and lactating women, infants with immature kidneys, the elderly who have reduced metabolic clearance, and folks with complex medical conditions like active cancer or heart failure. For these high-risk populations, herbal medicine shouldn't just be a casual choice. It requires strict specialist clearance.
Here is the actual structured clinical toolkit they use. It's 7 simple questions. Number 1, identity. What exact species and plant part is this? 2, product. What is the preparation, the dose, and the expiry? 3, person. Are they in a vulnerable risk group? 4, purpose. What specific symptom are they actually trying to treat? 5, evidence. Is there real science supporting this use? 6, monitoring. What side effects do we need to be tracking? And 7, referral. Are there any red flags that mean they need to see a doctor immediately? Walking through these 7 steps literally prevents adverse reactions and dangerous delays in care.
And finally, we always have to look at the regulatory and legal context. In Malaysia, for example, the Ministry of Health regulates all of this under Act 775. A safe commercial product is going to have an NPRA MAL registration number, and it will have a physical hologram security sticker on it. That little sticker is your proof that the government has actually screened that specific batch for heavy metals, microbes, and illegal adulterants.
Well, we have covered a massive paradigm shift today, from understanding a plant's incredible biological defense mechanisms to the wild differences in preparation methods, right through to navigating the very real risks of drug interactions and liver toxicity. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder. The next time you reach for a natural remedy on the shelf, will you know exactly what's inside? Take this new clinical framework, stay curious, and above all, stay safe. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.